What's going on, everybody? Steve here. We're back. No longer broadcasting from the friendly confines of San Juan Center. We are back in Isla Verde here, having a great time. Figured we would stick with the theme of Chapter 4, clearance items, staying in that area, but applying it to a different airport, different situation. So as you know, we bounced around from Borinquen. We had a 4-part series on there. We went to Juliana, touched on some non-radar separation, but some clearance items as well. So I figured we would go down to Ponce, right? The wonderful town of Ponce, Puerto Rico, and go over the procedures there. So today is Ponce because every other part of the island is its parking lot, or so the joke goes. So it's a great segue into non-towered airport procedures here at ZSU. And I figured we would use a nice little twilight shot here because most of the stuff that takes place at Ponce happens in the evening on your midnight shift. So if you're a D side, this is great for you to know because sometimes you'll get calls from dispatch for clearances. You'll get calls from flight service for clearances if the remote control air ground is down at Ponce, right? 121.9 sometimes goes down, and the D side might have to deal with some of this. More often than not, no, under normal circumstances, this is geared towards prepping the R side ready for Ponce operations or any operations where there is no air traffic control tower. So possibly Mayaguez, but more often than not, it's going to be Ponce. So I'm excited. This is really, really fun. It's a great way to master some phraseology, master some techniques, and really just master the sector and truly apply all disciplines of the 7110. Chapter 4, we've covered Chapter 5. There's a little bit of Chapter 6, not so much Chapter 7, and a little bit of Chapter 10. So I'm really excited. Let's dive into it. Let's waste no time. I will see you at the next slide. Somebody say Ponce? Well, I did. Everybody loves Ponce, right? Colorful fire station and just a whole different part of the island, I hear. So here we go. We'll dive into clearance items as per the 7110.65. That's today's bullet list. That's the first one we fired away. We'll discuss solicitation of IFR cancellations, right? There's no air traffic control tower here, so we have to do it all ourselves using different types of equipment that we have available to us. We'll cover departure restrictions, right? So we'll talk about, to a certain extent, how we get the IFR cancellations work aircraft into Ponce, and then we'll really hit it heavy with the departure stuff. So we'll take a gander at the available options to depart the Ponce airport, right? We have a couple options available to us, even though the Ponce VOR is no longer there. And yeah, that'll pretty much end the presentation. We'll end with that stuff. So ready, set, jets, go, heavy jet flow. All right, I'll see you there. Okay, so here we are sitting in R8, and we have Barry 560, Barry Aviation 560 on the visual approach, leaving 4,500, slowing up to 150 knots in arrival phase in the MER status tag, direct to Ponce Airport. They have their visual approach clearance. Now, if this was like Aguadilla, right, which we have exhaustively went into, right, we had about 4 videos worth, we went over radar service termination. Right, just be very simple. Radar service terminated, contact Aguadilla Tower 124.9 or 5. Great, there's a tower there, right? Juliana, Bradshaw, Bird, no different. Radar service terminated, contact them on this. But we don't have that option. There is a Ponce tower. It's no longer attended, but it sits dormant there at the Ponce airport. But we don't have that option. So how do we continue to provide positive separation, which every facility and controller has done for Barry 560 from the time they departed, right? You know, the ground controller gave, or clearance delivery gave the clearance, ground controller made sure they taxied to the active, the local controller made sure they had same runway separation, departure controller ensured separation, en route center to en route center to en route center to meeting us, you at R8, the end gamer, taking care of Barry 560 as they make their way to Ponce. So you have big responsibilities. It's the final stage, right? And almost the most complicated since we don't have an air traffic control tower there. But what we're going to do is going to take that complexity out of there and going to have you doing this like a champ in no time. Okay. So with that all being said, let's see what the 7110 has to say. Still in Chapter 4, mind you. If necessary, before instructing an IFR aircraft arriving at an airport not served by an air traffic control tower, good, so far so good, that describes our situation almost perfectly, or flight service station, right? There is no physical flight service station located at the Ponce airport, which I think is the 7110 in this situation is what they are alluding to, right? We have Lockheed Martin Flight Service who takes care of flight service here in the Caribbean, the U.S. Virgin Islands, San Juan or Puerto Rico, and everywhere else except Alaska. So this still describes our situation. To change to common traffic advisory frequency, provide the pilot with instructions on how to cancel his or her IFR flight plan. Good. So we need to tell them, hey, this is how you cancel. Basically that. This can be done if the airport has or doesn't have an IFR, or correction, have an air-to-ground communications outlet, right? So luckily we do. Ponce, we have 121.9er, which I believe is a remote control air-ground or a remote communications outlet. I can't remember which one, but we have them both at our disposal. So when the aircraft lands or desires to take off, they can broadcast and we can hear them very clearly. It's nice how it works. So what does this not only look like, but what does it sound like, right? Phraseology wise, right? We would like to keep it short and sweet, finding that phrase that fits. So let's take a look here. Barry 560, report cancellation of IFR on this frequency or on 121.9er. Easy enough, short and sweet. Hey, man, you can cancel with me here on 1875, or when you land, taxi off the active, close out your IFR flight plan, just call me on 121.9er and let me know. Cool. Another option, Barry 560, report cancellation IFR on this frequency or with San Juan radio. Perfect. Now, if you go to AirNav, and AirNav is your buddy. AirNav is a great website. I love it. It's great resources. And you look at the chart for the Ponce Airport, it does say that the flight service station that Ponce is served by is San Juan radio. Now, you may or may not know that we no longer have flight service located on the island of Puerto Rico. It was contracted out to Lockheed Martin, but the names have stayed the same. So it's still San Juan radio, but that flight service specialist might be in Raleigh or Houston or Alexandria, Virginia, somewhere. So just kind of keep up the suspension of disbelief here. But don't be surprised if they take the option to call flight service. Flight service will call you at the sector and relay Barry 560's IFR cancellation. Barry would say, cancel with you or with flight service, Barry 560. Perfect, right? So now what do you do just as if you were doing the tower thing? Barry 560, radar service terminate, change your advisory frequency approved. Perfect. This would work for Mayaguez, Borinquen when the tower is closed. Shoot, if Juliana's closed and somebody's landing Juliana or CJ Lloyd, that would work. And obviously works here at Ponce. Now, another option. Sometimes 1.9er goes out of service and the aircraft may not be comfortable using flight service to relay that. Sometimes it behooves you to give the position's phone number to the pilot, right? Barry 560, report cancellation of IFR, this frequency, or with me, or with San Juan Center, however you want to say it, and get ready to give the phone number to the position ever so slowly to be copied, because sometimes it's the only way. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. If they can't get in touch with you, they would be looking up the phone number or something like that. So just remember, you might have to also give the phone number, but this time for a good reason. So, okay, see you at the next slide. Good job with that. Okay, so following along with this progression of steps, right? Respond to a pilot's cancellation of his or her IFR flight plan as follows. Call sign IFR cancellation received. And what a wonderful, short and sweet phrase it is, because upon hearing that they're canceling their IFR flight plan and you respond with that, you have just completed that segment of flight for that aircraft. When they departed and went through facility to facility, ended up at your position, positive separation was ensured until that very moment. That symbolic act of closing that IFR flight plan is like, hey, this one's in the books, another successful flight. These people got to the Ponce Airport safely from wherever they departed, and it ended with me and this procedure in particular. So it's that heartwarming, wonderful, good job, mission accomplished, that warms your heart up. Yeah, good job. Good vibes with that one. So what happened? So the aircraft call sign will go to code suspense area on your scope. So once they get too low, outside of radar coverage or below radar coverage, the aircraft will populate your code suspense list. That sometimes happens, or given Ponce's proximity to the auto handoff area for San Juan approach, most notably the Joshi gate, sometimes the aircraft will go into handoff status. Barry will go into handoff status, and chances are the approach controller will not take it, so it'll flash to the approach controller, but the track will be preserved. It'll stay on the scope as opposed to populating your track suspense list. A little neat thing about micro EARTs is if an aircraft is in handoff status, it will always preserve the track. It's pretty cool. Like sometimes you'll have an aircraft that has been handed off and it will fly to the end of the edge of the scope or the end of the system data plane of micro EARTs, and it'll still be there, right? Handoff will always preserve the track. A little fun fact about micro EARTs. Cool. Now, don't worry, right? The aircraft, they're on final, right? They're probably landing. Lots of things for the pilot to do, land the aircraft safely, taxi off the active runway, make their calls on CTAF, right? The advisory frequency, just a whole slew of things, right? Continue to scan and await DFR cancellation so you may drop the track, right? The wonderful thing that we just described, hey, we're on the ground, okay, cool, IFR cancellation received, you drop that track and there it goes away, it's done, right? It's history. But if things persist and you still haven't heard anything, you might have to reach out on 121.9, or maybe they forgot. Sometimes you'll have the supervisor call the police or the airport authority and say, hey, is there this, pencil-looking two-propped aircraft on the ground that you saw, in so many words, asking if they know about the aircraft, right? Because like I said, if the pilot forgot to cancel their IFR, there are some resources available to us. Like I said, most notably the police department near Ponce or the airport authority. JetBlue has staff there at this time of night sometimes, or even during the day. They can go out onto the ramp and see that, hey, there's this Brasilia 120 here, November 560 BA. Oh, that must be him. You can use some deductive reasoning there before you make things too official, because if those options are exhausted, just remember, go to chapter 10. 10.3.1, right? Emergencies, right? Now we're talking about some little iffy things, right? Consider an aircraft to be overdue. Initiate the procedure stated in this section, right? Section 10.3.1, to issue an all-not when neither communications nor radar contact has been established in 30 minutes. Have passengers of VFR aircraft arriving at an airport not served by an air traffic control tower flight service station fails to cancel their IFR flight plan after receiving instructions to cancel, right? That's why you provided those instructions, so they can do so, whether in the air or on the ground. Well, they haven't done that, right? So in a half hour, just remember, you might have to start some official process, right? This official process is a way for us to ensure the safety of the people on board, make sure they are safe, because usually things like this end in a non-event, as simple as the pilot forgetting to close their IFR flight plan or some rational explanation behind it all, right? Very seldom does it ever turn into an all-not and search and rescue and coordinating with a whole bunch of other entities trying to find this aircraft, right? Usually it's a non-issue, but just remember that if it gets uncomfortably too long and you find yourself working, you continuously scan and see that Barry 560 is still present there in your coast suspense list, you might have to take action, right? You and the supervisor will start the ball rolling on possible search and rescue procedures. But like I said, chances are it's very innocuous, sometimes a very small detail that was omitted. Small detail, I say small because it's easy to forget, but what big repercussions can result from it. So just keep in mind, but more often than not, it ends as simply as this. You're working, right? You're working in other traffic, and you hear on the loudspeaker, San Juan Center, Barry 560 on the ground, Ponce cancel IFR. And you get to say the wonderful Barry 560 IFR cancellation received. Drop the track, take note of the IFR cancellation time, and guess what? Like I said, that pat yourself on the back, warm your heart moment. You have just been that final end game personnel in the great, wonderful, complex system of the NAS, and sure enough, you just ensured the safe arrival of Barry 560 into Ponce Merced Airport. So wonderful job with that, great process. It truly makes you appreciate the complexity, but also just the process, the contingent process that the 7110 offers to ensure separation, ensure safety throughout the entire system, even when there are certain elements missing, like here a control tower at the field, or radio communications at the field, right? Or non-radar operations at the field, right? It's amazing that safety is guaranteed, and we do what we do with these rules in place. So it kind of makes you reflect and say, hey, this is pretty darn cool. So good job with that, and yeah, let's keep moving on, right? All things Ponce. See you there. I perfected. Did somebody say Ponce? Well, I know we sure did, because guess what? We're still staying in chapter 4. So we have this glorious looking test 1, 2, 3 flight plan, and we see what chapter 421 clearance items covers. What must be said for a standard departure clearance? Well, it's real simple. It breaks it down into a couple of paragraphs, both numbered and lettered, but here is the abridged version for you. Aircraft identification. Kind of self-evident, kind of makes sense, right? Standard instrument departure procedure. That's pretty cool. That's a sexy item because guess what? Ponce is served by a SID. So wonderful. Fancy that. Route of flight. Okay, pretty cool. In this order, it's kind of making sequential sense. Aircraft altitude and order flown, right? We know that we usually give initial altitude to maintain and expect something after that. Frequency and beacon code info. Easy enough, right? Departure frequency and finally the beacon code. So let's give this clearance a try. Okay, so I'm going to mark up the strip accordingly. There you go. Got my little red up arrow. Perfect. And I'm going to turn on my black pen. Actually, let's get the clearance going first. Okay, so boom, there it is. So test 1, 2, 3. Clear to the Fort Lauderdale Airport via Wilford to departure. Brink in transition, Lima 452 hairbag is filed. Maintain 7,000. Expect flight level 320. 10 minutes after departure. Departure frequency 118.75, and this is terrible. Squawk 3344. Very simple. 7,000, 10 minutes after D, right? D for departure, 320. They can expect 1875, and the C to say, hey, this is a communications item. Perfect. You can give it a try, rewind the clip, practice it, right? You've probably done this a million times, but you can never do it enough because guess what? This is going to be a lot of your job as a D side, and whenever you're dealing with not relaying clearance through towers, you're going to be doing this on the R side. So good. Let's keep this going with this test 1, 2, 3. I'll see you at the next slide. Now remember, if you remember watching the Juliana presentation we had, right? The Anne Hathaway list, Princess Juliana Diaries, we said that absent any preferential departure routing or routing that you yourself, right, by scanning the ticket and saying, hey, this route is wrong, I need to put something in here, or, oh man, this is a full route clearance item because I got to fix this, right? Absent any of that, if the Test 1, 2, 3, the crew of Test 1, 2, 3 found a perfect, spot on, absolutely wonderful, bodacious, totally correct flight plan that adheres to our LOAs, Miami's LOAs, right? All that perfect stuff, right, that exists in this world we live in, right? Then guess what? You're allowed to use an abbreviated departure clearance, right? And it's absolutely beautiful. So let's see what that looks like. Issue an abbreviated departure clearance if its use reduces verbiage and the following conditions are met. And I kind of, yet again, watered this down to make sure that it fits the situation, right? A phrase that fits. ATC has not been changed by a pilot, company, operations author, input operator, or in the stored flight plan program prior to departure. Perfect. Nobody's touched the flight plan, right? You didn't have to put anything, right? You did not go into the FDIO, the flight data input output computer, and put in anything preferential or added a fix, added an airway, took out an airway, took out some erroneous stuff. No, this is what was presented to you as it came off the printer. This is what the dispatcher, pilot, flight crew filed. It's great. It works. You go down there and you're going to be able to say with great peace of mind, test 1, 2, 3, cleared to the Fort Lauderdale Airport as filed. See how we just reduced all of that initial, the initial route segment, assigning the departure procedure, all that stuff, and go into all that jazz. Maintain 7,000. Expect flight level 32010 minutes after departure frequency 118.75, squawk 3344. Right, and you can mark it up if you want. Be my guest. It's absolutely, practice marking it up, but. Just remember, if there's no PDR, which we covered pretty heavily in the Juliana situation, if there's nothing like that, guess what? You are good to say, hey, as filed, right? Using that phraseology, right? And boy, does it cut down on verbiage. And boy, a minute here, 30 seconds here, a 45-second clearance here, guess what? That time adds up, whether you're the D side or the R side. Because remember, if you're the D side working this, you should know by now that guess what? There are other lines ringing. There's other people trying to call you. You have to call other people. And if you're the R side, shucks, you have weather calls to give. You have traffic advisories to give. You have radar service termination and, kissing people goodbye. You have vectors to give. You have to speed control people. You have a sequence cooking at Juliana, Joshi, and Vetus, and you have this guy calling you for his clearance, and you're gonna read FRC all the way to Fort Lauderdale with every airway and fix in between. No, don't make it that hard. Don't put that burden on yourself. If it says perfectly what it says, and what it says is correct and sound with respect to LOA and SOP, by all means, just shorten that, man. Make your life easier. So hopefully you take that away from this slide. That was its intention, okay? So let's keep this going. All right, good job with that. Okay, so here we are. Our strip is still marked up, so think of not last, right, the abbreviated departure slide, but the one before that, right? So here we go. So our transmission should end with a good read back, right? Sometimes the pilot's required to give one, right? There's 7110 goes into great detail. You can continue to read that. But this aircraft is not ready for departure yet. They are not, gassed up. Maybe they're waiting on passengers or something like that. So they have some time. So this is a perfect time for you to end your transmission with their readback with a hold for release. Now, hold for release instructions must be used when necessary to inform a pilot or controller that a departure clearance is not valid until additional instructions are received. This is perfect because guess what? You're informing the pilot that, hey, you have your clearance, but guess what? It is not valid until I release you, right? Until you get another explicit instruction from me that you're released into the air traffic control system, okay? So when issuing a hold for release, instructions include departure delay information if applicable. And we'll talk about that situation in just a second here. Let me give the example. Test 1, 2, 3, hold for release, advise number 1 and ready for departure. That will be the common phraseology that you use because they gave you a good readback. They're not ready yet, right, for departure, right? Departure is not imminent, right? So a perfect response would be test 1, 2, 3, hold for release, HFR, right? Hold for release. Advise when number 1 and ready for departure. So you don't have to tie up the airport with long clearance void times because, that's what we're getting to, right? That's the inevitable end game here is giving a clearance void time for test 1, 2, 3 to own the airport from a certain time window so they can depart. Now, more often than not, sometimes when you have a sequence in the Ponce, maybe you have an arrival and they're ready, right? And they call you number 1 and ready for departure. Guess what? There's a aircraft that is already cleared. They're on the approach into the airport. They own the airport, right? 1 in, 1 out. Test 1, 2, 3, hold for release. Expect a 10-minute departure delay awaiting IFR inbound cancellation. Very simple. You gave the reason why. You gave a ballpark time estimate there. Okay, there's about 10 minutes, right, for this aircraft to land and cancel. Just waiting for that. And you let them know the picture. You also gave them a heads up that, hey, there's somebody else inbound, so get ready to listen to the CTAF, the Common Traffic Advisory Frequency, because somebody else is coming to play. So there it is. Hold for release. So as you see, we're building up to granting that release, right, via clearance void time. So you can see that's where we're going. So I'm pretty sure that's the next slide, so I'll see you there. Okay, so our script is nicely marked up. As you see, the handwriting is a lot better now. Somebody came over and the magic of Microsoft PowerPoint. So when issuing a clearance void time, right, so here we are, we reached that point. At airports not served by air traffic control towers, provide alternative instructions requiring the pilots to advise ATC of their intentions no later than 30 minutes after the clearance void time, if not airborne. Okay, that's just a long way of saying, hey, guess what? I'm going to release you off this airport, and you have to let me know of your intentions if you don't talk to me within a specified amount of time. Really, like, what's going on? Do you need more time? Are you not going to go? Right? Or is the flight canceled? Like, what's going on here? Like, this is the power of information, right? Information is power. Knowledge is power. That whole colloquialism. The facility delivering a clearance void time to a pilot must issue a time check. A void time issued using a specified number of minutes does not require a time check. Well, good for us. We're going to go over both examples. So here we go. Test 1, 2, 3 is holding for release. They call us number 1, and here we go. Here's the quick way, the new way. It's kind of a new concept here in the 7110. Test 1, 2, 3. Clearance void if not off in 5 minutes. If not off in 5 minutes, advise San Juan no later than 5 minutes of intentions. Perfect. No need for a time check. Okay, very good. Okay, you can practice that way. That is perfectly well said and acceptable when you're training, or a little bit longer but a little more explicit. Test 1, 2, 3, clearance void if not by 1045. If not by 1045, if ASM wants to not later than 0150 of intentions time. Now 0141 and 1/4. Perfect. Good job. Practice, practice, practice. You should practice this phraseology. It should not bog you down. It should be second nature. This is a really good opportunity for you to get ahead and just have this stuff be stored in your mind, mindlessly, spewing out, and you can concentrate on the more difficult aspects, separation and other things that will give you a hard time. So, okay, let's keep it going. Good job with this, and let's keep practicing. Okay, now we are presented with the joys of the Wilfred to departure. So Wilfred to departure, very efficient way for our nav-equipped aircraft to depart Ponce. Allows for both a runway 12 and 30 departures to utilize a Borinquen, Dorado, Olga, and then last transitions, right? I pulled this up from AirNav. Feel free to pull it up and take a look at it yourself. It's a great way for aircraft to climb in a small area. Now, you're going to be tempted to turn the aircraft on course. You're going to be pressured by the pilots to turn the aircraft on course as soon as possible, leaving a certain altitude, clear direct dis. But just hear me out. If you're really busy and they're flying this procedure, your priority should not be to turn this aircraft on course. This procedure is very efficient in climbing the aircraft in a small amount of space. Here, just bear with me here. If they depart runway 30, they're going to turn and they're going to make a horseshoe around, go to Tejas. From Tejas to Rohan, to Javi, to Wilfred, to Vicente, to Omar, to Miguel, Adacy, back over Tejas, and say if they're going north, right, north, over the Dorado transition, over Joshi, they have to cross that above 11, but believe me, this aircraft, having flowing this amount of track miles in this distance, speeding up and climbing at a good rate, they will be at a respectable altitude in a small amount of area. You don't have to worry about them being trafficked with a whole bunch of aircraft. This little procedure almost keeps them laterally separated from a whole bunch of aircraft, right? If you have aircraft landing over Joshi, which usually causes people heartburn when they get a Ponce departure request, a release request off of Ponce, and they have a whole bunch of Joshi traffic, well, guess what? This will keep them clear of that. Look, they're going to cross Joshi at or above 11. Aircraft landing San Juan have to cross Joshi at 7. That almost ensures that they're going to be at least 4,000 feet at Joshi, right? If you leave them on this procedure. It's pretty awesome. Same thing with, you can just see here also with runway 12 is a little less, a little more anticlimactic, but still it follows the same way. These turns and stuff, you're dealing with jets and high performance aircraft. This procedure, just letting them be, as Ronco said, set it and forget it. This is a beautiful procedure for that. And you'll see it in the lab. And I would challenge you, if you're going downstairs and going to be doing the radar class, I would challenge you for your first couple of times you get Ponce requests for release and you release them, just leave them on the procedure. It will totally deconflict whatever you got going on. So just keep that in mind, right? You'll be tempted to turn them on course, and guess what? Probably 85% of the time you're going to be able to turn those aircraft on course with no conflict. But when there are conflicts, when Sector 8 is a beehive of activity, you leave them on that procedure, it's going to just work itself out. It's really fun to watch an aircraft fly it. So I encourage you to do it sometimes downstairs in the lab. It's configured in the lab and you can do it, and it'll be pretty cool. So for your viewing pleasure. So good talk with that, good tape talk. Let's keep it rolling. Okay, so not RNAV equipped, no big deal, right? I know it's 2020, but guess what? I mean, sometimes aircraft aren't RNAV equipped, and that's okay. No worries. You and the aircraft have options, okay? You down with the ODP? Yeah, you know me. Well, obstacle departure procedure, right? If you go and look at it, right? We'll go over this in a second. Here's what it is. Here's what is defined as some ODPs, which are established solely for obstacle avoidance, right? Not any kind of navigation, right? Require a climb in visual conditions to cross the airport, affix or navigate in a specified direction at or above specified altitude. These procedures are called visual climb over the airport, VCOA, to ensure safe and efficient operations. Pilots verbally request, right? Now, okay, they have to ask for this. You don't solicit this. This is like a special VFR thing. Like, hey, say, hey, do you want to do this this sexy VCOA? And they, what's that? Well, no, the pilot has to ask you for it and for your approval. Verbally request approval from ATC to fly VCOA when requesting their IFR clearance. Can be found in the chart supplement, formerly the AFD, or the Green Book, Perfect. And here's a little excerpt of it here. If you go into the facility directory, or if you go on AirNav and you read the narrative, they will have it, and they'll have each city for the region that keep calling it the AFD, the chart supplement covers, and you'll be able to find it here. And there we go. Ponce does have a vertical climb over the airport, right, for both runways. So you're set, okay? So you will very seldom, I've been working at San Juan Center for 5 years. I've never heard a pilot ever request vertical climb over the airport. But no, it is an option, and know that they are going to call you, and you are the approver of it. So just be aware of what it is. So you can find this also on AirNav too. So, okay, keep it going. Let's keep these, let's let the good times roll. Okay, so still not RNAV equipped? Well, no big deal, okay? And they don't want to do the vertical climb over the airport? Don't worry, you have another option. And this is the one that happens the most, right? If they don't file the Wilfred 2 departure, they're not RNAV equipped. They're not going to call and request you for this. They will ask you for what we are just about to cover. The aircraft may be asked if they can provide their own terrain and obstruction avoidance until reaching a certain altitude. This happens a lot. This is useful for aircraft both on the ground or in the air. IFR pickup when the altitude of the aircraft is not known right away, right? They could be in the air. They could have departed Ponce via FAR, which is more likely the case, or they're on the ground and they have no way to, they don't want to do the vertical climb over the airport or the Wilfred 2. So let's see how this works. San Juan Center, Skyhawk 88 Sierra X-ray at Ponce, request IFR to San Juan. And look, did you read the remarks? Read the whole strip. Enable RNAV procedures. Okay, so nothing for them. Skyhawk 88 Sierra X-ray San Juan Center, are you able to maintain your own terrain and obstruction clearance until reaching 6,600? All right, 88 Sierra X-ray affirmative, able. All right, 88 Sierra X-ray, clear to San Juan Airport via leaving 6,600 direct, Joshi direct, maintain 7,000, departure frequency 18.75, squawk 4645. Perfect, right? You're gonna have this little dialogue with the pilot. 99.99% of the time they're gonna be able to maintain VFR, right, their own terrain obstruction avoidance until they reach 6,600, and you're gonna be able to get them on course. So just remember that, okay? Good option to have. Practice this. You're gonna get used to this. You're gonna see this in the class. You're gonna see it in the live environment. So very good. Okay, so we have exhausted every option or most of the options on how to depart aircraft when they're not RNAV capable, right? When they can't use the Wilfred 2 departure. Now, let's pretend that every aircraft that we're going to talk to here from here on out is able to the Wilfred 2 departure, right? RNAV equipped, willing and able to do so. So keeping that in mind and using the Wilfred 2 chart, whether you pull it up in a different window here for the presentation or you have it out in front of you, let's practice assigning the most advantageous transition to the following aircraft, right? So think of it this way. This is great practice. This is something you want to practice because guess what? You're going to get a call. You're going to see that the flight plan is kind of bad because there's no way for them to really depart, right, without the procedure, vertical climb over the airport, maintain their own terrain and obstruction avoidance, up into a certain altitude. So guess what? You have to be aware that they are willing and able to Wilfred 2 departure. And you have to assign a transition that makes sense to where they want to end up in San Juan Center's airspace. As we see, this aircraft wants to end up in Kinch. What transition makes sense for them to fly? So just let's go over real quick to sink in your head. If you start with the Northwest, you have your Borinquen transition, right? Takes care of a lot of en route airways. You have the Dorado transition, which is a great way for them to make their way through Sector 4, north of the island of Puerto Rico. You have the Olga transition, which takes care of any aircraft going east. So if they're going towards St. Croix, going towards Juliana's airspace, or Piarco Center's airspace heading directly east is good. Olga transition is also southeast, right? It's not directly east, so it's also good for your NADAs and GCs. If they're going to Piarco Center or starting to go down to Trinidad and Tobago, Georgetown, Zandri, Suriname, and then immediately south to Maiquetia's airspace, Curaçao's airspace, you have the Alaska transition, okay? So remember, those transition points are where they're going to leave the departure route or the departure phase of flight and make their way and transition into the en route stage of flight, and you're providing that smooth segment. So let's give it a go for this Doral 343, bearing that in mind. Doral 343, are you familiar with the Wilfred 2 departure? Doral 343, affirmative, we are familiar. Doral 343, cleared to the Kennedy Airport via Wilfred 2 departure, Dorado transition, Lent, Lima 455 Kinches filed, maintain 7,000, expect 31010 minutes after departure, departure frequency 118.75. Very good. As SpongeBob would say, sometime later after readback, San Juan Center, Doral 343, holding short runway 12. Route 343, released for departure. Clearance void if not off in 7 minutes. If not off in 7 minutes, advise San Juan Center no later than 10 minutes of intentions. Very good. Okay? Practice this. Have this to be where it's like, right in the back of your head. You're able to just regurgitate this on request, right? Know those transitions, right? Study the chart and assign them and get these aircraft up, out, where they're going. Because if you assign the wrong transition, they might come back and say, are you sure you want to fly this way? Because I'm trying to go east, and you gave me the Puerto transition, right? So, just have it make sense, right? Make everybody on the same page, essentially. So let's keep it going with the examples, okay? Good job. Okay, so we have our last two examples here, right? You're going to see the Puerto transition all the time. So I didn't put it on here. So let's go over it. VistaJet 843, they want to go to Queen Beatrix. They found Ponce direct Scapa. Well, if you're looking at your chart, whether, like I said, in another window or here available, you would see the elapsed transition made sense, right? So if you want, pause the video, insert the elapsed transition, and go over what that sounds like, right? I didn't write it, right? This is like homework, if you will, right? This is your practice. You can practice assigning the elapsed transition, right? And practice what that means for how does the clearance sound now that you're adding some kind of new element to it, right? VistaJet 843 going to Lloyd, that sounds like the Olga transition would be perfect, right? Olga direct St. Croix would work fine. Alaska direct Scapa will work just fine. So have at it. The world is your sandbox. The world is your oyster in this sense. Practice these examples. As you see, we've covered every transition. Dorado is perfect for north. Olga is perfect for aircraft going east and southeast. Directly south is Alaska. And if they're going northwest, Puerto is just a no-brainer. So very good. Awesome job with that. Well, what do you know? We made it to the end, and look at that view. Just another day at the Ponce parking lot, right? Going with that inside joke. Wonderful job today with that, right? We covered a lot of interesting things. We built on a lot of skills that we have gone over, right? This built upon last presentation for the Juliana D side, kind of that. It supplemented what we were doing in Aguadilla. This will cover when Aguadilla is closed. So this kind of covered just about every situation where you are the controlling authority when all the towers and approach controllers are closed and go home. This is how you operate, right? This is it. This is positive separation in the world of no underlying facilities under you. This is why you're center. This is why you make the big bucks. You got the big picture, right? And this is one of those privileges that is afforded to you when you acquire the airspace for the night or for the day or for a determined amount of time. So really happy. I hope you enjoy it. I know it was a little long, but we covered a lot. So I hope you enjoyed yourself. I know I had a great time. You're going to see that this is really fun playing every role from takeoff to, saying goodbye. You did it all, right? You did a tower controller's job. You did a departure controller's job, approach controller's job, right? You wear all those hats. And I'm proud of you for doing that. And you should be proud of yourself for doing that because you're going to be great at it. So, Steve, may your attitude always be like your separation, positive. I will see you at the next lecture. Take care, guys.